segment 3.1, Nikud Aleph. Halalechet ata chafetz? Halalechet ata chafetz? A great way to get acquainted with someone is to find out what sort of activities they enjoy doing, and similarly to share with them what sort of activities you enjoy. This segment will enable you to do that in Hebrew. Toward the end of the segment, you'll find a list of activities. Select 2 that you enjoy, and then you'll be selecting 2 which you think a neighbor may enjoy. In order to respond to the questions, do you like this or that, you can use the evaluation emet if it is true, or sheker if it is not true. Here then is an inquiry that you can use to find out if a particular activity that you have selected is one that your neighbor actually does enjoy doing. Halalechet ata chafetz? Halalechet ata chafetz? Or if addressing a woman, Halalechet at chafetza? Halalechet at chafetza? As you can tell from the gloss on the left, this question would uncover whether or not your friend, your neighbor, likes to travel. Now, if your friend or neighbor does like to travel, then this is the response that you may hear. Emet. Lalechet ani chafetz. Emet. Lalechet ani chafetz. Or if your neighbor is a woman, Emet. Lalechet ani chafetza. Emet. Lalechet ani chafetza. If, on the other hand, you guessed incorrectly and proposed an activity that your neighbor does not enjoy doing, then expect to hear a response like this. Sheker. Lo lalechet ani chafetz. Sheker. Lo lalechet ani chafetz. Or if your friend is a woman, expect to hear this negative response. Sheker. Lo lalechet ani chafetza. Sheker. Lo lalechet ani chafetza. Please practice these model inquiries and responses, folding in a variety of activities so that when you come to class you'll be comfortable asking and responding, so you can share about your own interests and learn about the interests of others. As you practiced the model inquiry and responses, I wonder if you noticed how the Hebrew sentence was put together. In particular, did you notice how early the actual inquired about activity was listed? In the inquiry, it comes immediately after the question word, the interrogative particle ha. The activity is lalechet, to travel, and it comes right directly after the question word, ha lalechet. And again, in the reply, we found that targeted activity, the item that was primarily asked about, appearing very early in both responses. Emet, lalechet ani chafetz. It appeared directly after the word emet. And in the negative response, sheker, lo lalechet ani chafetz. Again, the targeted activity, lalechet, appears very early. This is part of the flexibility of the Hebrew language, which makes it unusually able to deliver focus or to draw attention to particular parts of the message that's being conveyed. This can be immensely valuable for deriving the sense of focus within the composition of a biblical writer. The next few paragraphs will draw our attention to a particular aspect of negation in Hebrew that's able to lend emphasis to one element of the statement being negated. Given the topic that has been put before us, ha lalechet ata chafetz, is it traveling that you enjoy, that you're interested in? The focus there is on the activity. And it is for this reason that when a negative response is issued, the negation attaches right to that activity When we're negating an activity, we use lo. So we find the response, lo lalechet. It is not traveling, ani chafetz, that I desire to do. Lo attaches to the verbal element. Here it's an infinitive construct, lalechet. Perhaps you're wondering, why aren't we using that other way to negate in Hebrew, ein? Well, the reason is this. As soon as we use ein, we are negating not the activity, but the actor, the person. Let's see how that would sound in this case. It would read, eineni chafetz lalechet, meaning, I am not the one who desires to travel. Someone else here may, but it's not me. The variable then becomes the person, not I, but someone else. The activity stays constant. That's locked in as traveling. In the previous negation, lo lalechet, ani chafetz, the changeable piece then is going to be the traveling. The subject is going to stay constant. It is not traveling that I enjoy, but I, the subject is constant, I enjoy something else. I enjoy going out to have a meal with some friends, perhaps. Notice the activity is negated with lo. The subject is negated with ein. By the way, this principle that ein negates the subject explains why eineni appears in the shalosh nikudachat Jonah episode expression. And that expression in cell 4 reads, eineni ohev. Eineni ohev, meaning I am not one who is engaged in loving. Rather than saying ani lo ohev. Ani lo ohev. I am one who does not love. Well, here is how those two phrases make a difference in the connotation, the meaning of the story at that point. We have two characters. God, on the one hand, does love the people of Nineveh. Jonah, on the other hand, does not. The changeable piece there is the actor. The way to express that contrast rather woodenly would be as follows. God loves, not Jonah loves. Notice that loves is the element that remains constant, and we're just negating the subject. God loves, not Jonah loves. If instead we were to say ani lo ohev, the focus would switch from negating the subject and instead negate that attitude, here designated by the participle ohev, loving, which would amount to say, I do have an attitude towards the people of Nineveh, but loving is not the attitude. As for me, loving is something I don't do towards them. At this point, you're not expected to memorize or really commit to long-term understanding this principle, but you might want to jot down the page on which it's explained in order to come back to it at some future point. You'll say to yourself, wasn't there a difference between negating with lo and ein? And then you can come back to this page and reinforce that insight. Here is a handful of activities. Select two that you enjoy doing, and then select two either similar or different ones which you suspect may characterize the interests of a friend or neighbor. Le'echol, le'echol. Levakesh, levakesh. Ledaber, ledaber. Lehashlich, lehashlich. Limloch, limloch. Limtzo, limtzo. Lasum, lasum. Lishkav, lishkav. Latet, latet. In case you're wondering about parts of grammar, each one of these consists of a particular sort of infinitive preceded by the preposition le. If you wish to isolate the infinitive, simply remove the preposition le and its accompanying vowel. Thus, the simple infinitive for to eat would be echol. When expressing that eating is an activity that someone likes to do, Hebrew will precede the infinitive with the preposition le. The particular sort of infinitive which we find here is known as an infinitive construct. This simply means that it's found in close association with other words. You'll learn more about the infinitive construct and the alternative form of infinitive, known as the infinitive absolute, as your studies progress. This is a good time to point out that in Biblical Hebrew, the pronoun referring to one's own self, I, can take two forms, either ani or anochi. Ani and anochi. Please take time to read the comments that you find on the screen in order to become comfortable with these alternative forms of the first common singular pronoun, I. Next, let's consider words that are classed as being in pause or pausal forms. No doubt you've noticed that periodically a word will change its vocalization, or it will change which syllable receives the accent. Perhaps you've wondered why this takes place. There's a good explanation for it. It has to do with how accurately the Hebrew writing system matches how words are actually pronounced, particularly when they change their location in a phrase. For example, we were just talking about the word anochi as an alternative form of a pronoun. Yet sometimes you'll find it with the accent moving back towards the first part of the word, anochi. Here again the difference. Normally it's anochi, but sometimes it will be pronounced anochi. That was the case in the statement, Ra'ev anochi. As you read over this paragraph, you'll come to understand better how this change takes place. Let's focus on the Hebrew words into three bulleted segments. Under accent change, anochi over against anochi. Under vowel change, kesef over against kasef. Lechem over against lachem. Lecha in contrast to lach. In each of these, the first spelling and pronunciation represents the plain or the non-pausal form, while the second represents the pausal form. And finally, in the third bullet section, Haraev ata, as opposed to ata.